People just drop. They just drop and that's it.
On high alert.
Just straight up Nitazenes, and it was being sold to kids. It was just straight up poison.
For a deadly import hitting Australia.
So when it hits hard and it can explode. And we need to be ready for that.
Coming up on 60 Minutes.
You only need a tiny amount to have overdose.
Nitazenes are so dangerous, it's 1,000 times stronger than morphine. One touch can kill.
He never stood a chance.
But the dealers in China, making a fortune,
How will you send it to me?
By X price.
couldn't care less.
As parents, we want our kids to come home. Only thing that matters is to keep people safe and well.
Well, welcome to Extra Minutes, the 60 Minutes podcast. I'm Adam Hegarty. I'm joined by my colleague, Dimity Clancey. Dim, good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Nitazenes is your story. You can catch that on our YouTube channel, as well as 9 Now. I had no idea what Nitazenes were. I'd never heard the name before watching your story. What on earth are they?
I know. I'd never heard of them either. But it just kept getting told to us that it's the new fentanyl. It's the new fentanyl, but it's 50 times stronger than fentanyl. So it's an old painkiller that was developed back in the 1950s, but straight away deemed too dangerous to ever use on humans. So largely forgotten. But as drugs become stronger and stronger and, they are prohibition, many would argue, make things like this, these really strong, potent substances start being made and entering the market. And that's what's happened here. It first exploded back in 2021 in the UK. So the UK now is seeing 6 people die from accidentally overdosing on Nitazenes every week. It's now started to filter, though, into Australia. So far, there have been 20 reported deaths from Nitazenes and on top of dozens of overdoses. But the problem with this drug is people aren't getting it and importing it because they want to get a hit of Nitazenes. They're cutting it into all types of illicit drugs. So cocaine, MDMA, ketamine, your counterfeit pharmaceuticals, but also even vapes, black market vapes in vape juice. So you think you're going out on the weekend and you think, I'm just going to pop a pill, but your pill is actually laced with Nitazenes. And the tiniest amount, this is a drug that is deemed 1,000 times stronger than morphine.
Wow.
One tiny bit is enough to make you stop breathing. You'll go into an opioid overdose straight away. And the way they normally treat opioid overdoses is with a drug called naloxone, which reverses an opioid overdose. So what they're finding, though, is normally with a heroin overdose, the Narcan, 1 dose of it and you'll be okay. But with Nitazenes, you will have multiple doses and then in 20 minutes you'll go down again, you'll stop breathing and then you'll need another dose of it. So it's taking multiple doses of naloxone to bring people out when they overdose.
So this could be in a multitude of party drugs that people take, and basically it's being laced with it as like a cheap way to
absolutely
sell things.
In January, there was, as in the story you would have seen, there's a dance party happening middle of summer in Sydney at a huge venue at Homebush, and organisers of that realised that multiple people were overdosing, but they were not overdosing on MDMA. So they're being sold these tablets with a Red Bull logo on them.
Yeah.
And they're being sold as MDMA to kids, essentially. But they're going down and they're dropping, but they're responding to an opioid, to the naloxone, which you normally wouldn't if you were overdosing on MDMA.
Right.
So they realised that they were responding to the opioid medication. So they knew that what people thought they were taking was not actually what they were taking. So organisers actually stopped the festival and made an announcement. And, those working, Caitlin Dooley, who was there working on that night, said that without that quick thinking, without stopping it, because other people then didn't take their drugs, didn't take those Red Bull pills, it saved lives. And it allowed them also to put out an alert and to actually realise the emergency problem that was in front of them and get testing underway, that, there's Nitazene strips where they can test for it straight away. They were doing all of that. And then they realised that it was in fact Nitazenes and it had entered the market here in Australia.
Crazy to see. it's obviously scaring away with people taking party drugs, MDMA, or people taking cocaine or whatever it is laced with these dangerous things. But you mentioned vapes. I mean, you see vapes everywhere. I know people who vape. Like, so it's terrifying to think that they are taking something. Exactly.
In the toilets.
But what? It could be laced with this extremely deadly painkiller.
And absolutely. But, even people that go out, like half of the Australian population, what were the statistics? It was interesting. Half of the Australian population have taken an illicit substance in their life. And I think it's 13% of those people have taken a substance in the past year. So these are people that would go out and think they're buying a bag of cocaine, but actually it's laced with this deadly opioid. It's the problem is being prepared. So, the drug advocates of society would say, well, we have 2 drug checking facilities in the country. And the only way to really know what is in a substance is to check it. So when a threat like Nitazenes enters Australia, and it is here, it is on our streets, members of the public, are taking bags of Nitazenes into these drug checking facilities, realising what they are and thankfully not taking them. But when you have a threat like that, not being able to actually test your drugs is scary, because the gamble already of taking an illicit substance goes through the roof, And I think I'm a parent and my kids aren't that age, but you would just, if your kid's going out and that that's what they're going to do, kids want to go out and push the limits and try these things. And, they've probably done it 10 times before, but now there's the threat of Nitazenes that if the pill that they're going to take is actually cut in with this drug.
I'm not this old, but I'm actually going to say it. Back in my day, it's just terrifying to think. Like, if I was a parent, I'd be terrified to think that people are going out these days and just confronted with this stuff. But you've spoken to people, quote unquote, on the front line. So the dance wise, the people there who are trying to help people overdose, but then also in laboratories. How concerned are they? I mean, where does this stack up compared to
someone like Dr. Marianne Jauncey, who runs the safe injecting room? Yeah. She has dedicated her career to this space. When you've got someone like her saying, "I'm terrified. I don't, if this enters the market, the deaths will explode," and they're just watching what's happened in the UK. I mean, the fentanyl problem in North America, that everyone was really scared that was going to come to Australia. Now, that hasn't actually eventuated the way people thought it was. But the problem with Nitazenes is that it got into the UK, and now they're worried about, what's stopping it coming here. And they didn't think it was going to get into the UK. So they're worried about this. And the fact is, it is already here. Fentanyl never really had a presence the way Nitazenes is having a presence already. And so far 20 lives and multiple overdoses.
And you spoke to the mother of a young man who overdosed overseas. I mean, how does she cope with this?
It's her son, Dylan, 21 years old, a really talented musician. She says, he had his demons, but he turned to heroin to try and overcome those demons, and that they were working on it together, and that he'd been to rehab and he'd, started to use heroin again. But the big concern for her was that he was literally buying it on the black market, on the dark web. So going on and having it delivered to their family home in England. And she says, he was always getting vinyls or CDs or, music sent. So she's like, envelopes were coming, and who am I to question another envelope for Dylan? They came all the time in the post. But his heroin was literally being sent in an envelope to the family home in the mail.
That's the thing. People who aren't in this world, you think you're just in a car park late at night somewhere doing a drug deal. But it can come to the front door in Australia Post.
And I think that's the scary thing. And one of the big concerns for Claire is that, it was being advertised on things like SoundCloud and Twitter. And, SoundCloud was actually a platform that her son used to use to share his music. And it's thought that maybe, it's not confirmed, but it's thought that it was being advertised and that's where he saw it, on the actual platform that he was trying to share his music, the irony in that. But, it's what consequence, Claire would ask, do these companies have for being allowed to just sell these Nitazenes over the internet? I mean, we did it. We were so easy. It was so easy to get in contact with a chemical supplier in China.
Yeah, that was the most fascinating part of the story for me. I mean, you started speaking to it there, but I mean, just how simple, how easy was it to not only just find it online, but just to speak to someone about it?
Once we did our research on nitazenes and realised, how you kind of have to ask for it, and of course none of that's included because we don't want to tell people how to do it, but it was easy. And as soon as I messaged the seller in China, it was within minutes. She came back, yes, how much do you want? 7,000 US dollars a kilogram. It just, it was shocking to see, and this is a woman, a middle-aged woman in China wanting to sell me 3 kilograms. So to make a quick 21,000 US dollars, telling me it had no problems getting it through customs. She'd done it before. She just sends it by box. Then the call cuts out and I was suspicious. Like it was, the line was breaking up. But then she said, can we please message? And she took the option to take a video away because I wanted to call her back. But she took that option of the video away. So clearly didn't want to be on a video with me. But then I wanted to keep messaging. Still wanted to make her sale. And of course, we had no intention of ever buying any drugs or, going through with anything. But we did that just to show how easy it is. If I can do it, my kids are way tech savvy and, my eldest is 8 years old, how easy is it and our kids these days, they live online. They are so tech savvy. They know their way around the internet. And you just think if they had any idea of doing something like that, it's just so easy for them.
What was she like to speak to? I mean, you can spot a crook a mile away, Dimity Clancey, but
she just had a real willingness. Like she just wanted to make that sale, and from straight away, like when I started asking questions, will you get it through customs? You pay, we deliver. Don't worry. It's raw powder. And then as soon as I started to ask questions like, that these drugs are killing people here in Australia, what drugs? These aren't drugs. We sell powder. So tried to back away and then also like afterwards sent a message saying, could you please delete my account and all of, but of course we'd already got what we needed to show people how easy it is to get this. So, that's a problem in it. That's one side of the problem. And then the problem is actually after they land on the streets, and of course, a story like this always brings up the pill testing debate, the naloxone. That's another really interesting side of this story is the people in our story are calling for everyone to carry naloxone. So, we might have defibs in our car, we might have choking apparatus in our car, but they're now saying that every person, because in Australia, under federal funding, you can walk into a chemist, you, me, anybody, and say, could I please have a dose of naloxone? Now, apparently it's not that easy because people, some people don't know why. They get suspicious as to why you want naloxone. But they're calling for everybody to carry this so that if you come across somebody, you can save their life. Now, what does it tell you about the future risk of not only nitazenes, but just drug use in our country?
Rampant.
That if the people that are working at the heart of this issue are saying, I think everybody should have this. Everybody should be able to save that life if they can. What are they expecting is going to happen?
Being out there for the story, did you get the impression that in that scene, the party scene, that people realise that this is out there or how serious it is, or is it people don't realise? No
one has any idea.
Wow.
And
so scary.
The funny, it's not funny, but the probably the most concerning thing was that when we first rang Border Force, they had no idea.
Really?
They were, whether that was the member of the media team taking
Of course, yeah.
And it needed to go up the chain, but it's that lack of knowledge. Yet, the federal police put out a media alert recently warning people of nitazenes and that there had been overdoses. Just here in Sydney, 20 people overdosed at Easter time, all survived because they all made it to hospital. But, these clusters of overdoses in regional Victoria, another clusters is happening. So I was really disappointed that both police and Border Force declined the opportunity to come on and actually tell us what they're doing about it. But I think it's such a new phenomenon that they don't actually know what they're in for. They don't actually know what to do about it, and they admit it, they don't have anything operational in place at this point in time.
Well, that's right, warning the public because they can't stop it at the border when it's coming in.
Well, and they don't know how, they say it's coming in through the mail and but I don't think they They either don't want to acknowledge the problem at the moment, or they're not quite sure exactly where it's going to go. So we don't want to quite commit to going public with it yet. But they will put out a media release. So it didn't quite match up.
Yeah. What do you think the solution might be? Obviously, you mentioned there that everyone should carry that defence to it. I mean, pill testing is always a debate at these festivals. It's starting to move in that direction, isn't it?
Well, a lot of people in that, in the story would say that silence from authorities says it speaks volumes about the issue, that we need to take a different approach. People are, especially when these type of drugs are getting into the illicit drug market here, that we need to change our policy. Being silent and pretending something's not happening does not make for good policy. And that fear, I mean, I grew up in a house that do not touch drugs. It's that fear and it's that changing the mentality. And I mean, I don't know. I've always grown up with that, and I don't have any interest in taking drugs, but I don't know what my kids are going to do when they go out. And surely you want your kids to be armed with knowledge, and kids these days, they want knowledge. They almost feel like it's their right to have knowledge. They're far more switched on about things than I reckon you and I were back in our day.
Absolutely.
So I would rather, if things like this are on the street, if Nitazenes are circulating in the community and in things like vapes, but even in your pills for your weekend or cocaine or anything, you would hope, don't take them. But I would like my kids to be knowledgeable, have that knowledge. What's in it? If they're going to do it, I mean, you can tell kids don't do it, but there are always kids. So at the end of the day, I feel like it should just be about safety.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I always find that when I speak to people who've been touched by drug overdoses or lost people, they are adamant that pill testing and a new way of going about things of that ilk is the right way to go. But then you speak to someone who isn't touched by that, is in their own bubble, and they don't come across this nefarious part of society that they're always, no, don't test it. It's illegal, just ban it.
And it doesn't match, because it is illegal, it doesn't match that giving people the green light to, it's that decriminalisation argument. You're giving people the green light to go and take drugs. But, Dr. Jauncey in the story would argue that you tell people not to take drugs, they're going to do it in a much more harmful way than if you tell people to take drugs in a controlled, knowledge, like informed way. I think it's an argument that's not going to go away. And, I think there probably does need to be a bit more open-mindedness. And how can you not agree with the argument that it's about keeping people alive and people safe? I think at the end of the day, that's all any of us want, right?
Absolutely. What was the argument and the message from the mum you spoke to? What does she want to see happen globally?
She wants big companies that are freely advertising this drug to be held to account. Because, as far as she's concerned, the people that sold her son drugs should at least have some sort of repercussion. So she's been campaigning a lot for that. But I think she just had a really beautiful message that, people just need to realise that what they're taking is not what they think it is anymore, and that people need to be vigilant about that and remember that next time. And she wants Dylan's death to be a reminder for everyone, and also a warning for Australia to be prepared. Don't end up like the UK, where this problem has actually taken hold and exploded.
Indeed, Dimity, fascinating, also frightening, unfortunately, but a reminder to everyone, you can catch your story on 9 Now and our YouTube channel.